At the end of my last theory video on when sister location takes place, I told you guys that I was going to make a video on when Elizabeth Afton dies. I've made videos before where I discussed this topic, most recently my FNAF timeline from last year, but I don't think I've ever made a video on this specific topic by itself. It's one that is commonly debated, but I think that with information we've received very recently, I may have the answer. In this video, I'll be providing all the evidence for each time frame Elizabeth could have died in, going in the order of what I think is least likely to what I think is most likely, kind of. So I hope you guys enjoy, and let's just get started. The first idea of when Elizabeth dies is that she died prior to the events of FNAF 4's minigames. The main piece of evidence for this is just that she doesn't appear in the minigames. Some argue that just because she doesn't appear doesn't mean she's dead. After all, she could just be with the Afton mother if we assume a divorce happened. However, in the CDs from Security Breach, Vanessa, who has a similar appearance to Elizabeth, claims her father is named Bill, and she seems to have a lot of connections to Elizabeth, possibly due to Glitchtrap brainwashing her into believing she is, or pretending to be Elizabeth, or possibly even Elizabeth herself getting involved. But regardless, in those therapy tapes, we learn about a divorce where Bill forced his daughter to talk badly about her mother in court, resulting in Bill getting custody. Since Bill is short for William and Vanessa is associated with Elizabeth, it's most likely that this is not actually Vanessa's origin, but rather Elizabeth's, which indicates that Afton should have custody of Elizabeth, so if she's alive, why isn't she home? It's also very clear that she isn't the pigtail girl, since they look quite different, and she tells the bite victim that she'll see him at the party, which wouldn't make sense considering if they were siblings, they would live together. However, I do think that this is the least likely option. But despite that, I don't really have a good explanation for where Elizabeth is. There's only one other option that explains Elizabeth's absence in FNAF 4 pretty well. Either way, Elizabeth dying before the bite victim explains the absence of Elizabeth in FNAF 4, but doesn't really make sense otherwise, so I'd say it's possible, but unlikely. But what else could explain Elizabeth's absence in FNAF 4? Well, what if Elizabeth simply wasn't born yet by the time of FNAF 4? What originally gave me this idea was the FNAF movie, which obviously is not in the game's timeline, but that doesn't make it completely irrelevant. Abby in the FNAF movie is Mike's younger sister, which already sets off some alarms, but the name Abby, while typically a nickname for Abigail, can be short for Elizabeth, and if you rearrange it a bit, it can also become Baby, the animatronic that Elizabeth possesses. Not only that, but in the movie itself, Chica almost kills Abby by spring-locking her in an Ella suit. Ella is revealed in the fourth closet to be the first in a line of 4 Charlie robots, and an Ella doll is also present inside each robot. So while Abby is very different to Elizabeth, she seems to be the equivalent of her in the movie. But what's interesting about Abby in the movie is that she is not born until after Garrett, the bite victim equivalent, dies. Garrett in the movies dies in 1987, which is a bit ironic, and we know that due to the movie being in 2000 and Mike, according to the movie novel, being 25 and he was 12 when Garrett died. Simple math. But Abby is 10 in the movie, meaning she was born in 1990, a whole 3 years after the bite victim died. The FNAF movie is a reimagining of FNAF 1, which is in 1993, and if we apply the same logic to the games, Elizabeth could be 10 in 1993, meaning she would have been born in 1983. In FNAF 4, the bedroom could easily just be set up early because she could have been on the way but not born yet. Another option could be that Elizabeth was born even later than 1983 and the bedroom could have just been a guest bedroom. There's also the fact that Circus Baby's Pizza World in the fourth closet opens after Freddy's is permanently closed. Source code back when the canceled due to leaks teaser came out also indicated that Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental, the facility from Sister Location, started up quickly after Elizabeth died, as it said that you could see the fun times being rented out at private parties in the same newspaper clipping that was about Baby's closing after one day. This indicates that Baby's rentals opened right after Elizabeth died, and since it's up and running during Sister Location, and we concluded in the last theory that Sister Location is after FNAF 1, that would indicate Elizabeth died after FNAF 1. However, there's a couple problems with this. While the movie is definitely valid evidence for this, it's not definitive by any means, as like I said, the movie is a different universe. That doesn't mean it can't provide evidence, but it does mean that things could have simply been changed, especially since it's a reimagining, as is the Silver Eyes. There's also the fact that in Didophobia, which takes place before Sister Location and likely after FNAF 1, the fun times are already down there, but the place was abandoned 10 years prior, indicating the rental service did start right after Elizabeth died, but that it shut down and had to be started up again following FNAF 1, indicating Elizabeth died sooner than that. There's also the issue of the bedroom. If Elizabeth was going to be born soon and the bedroom was set up for her, there should be a crib, but instead it's just a regular bed. If this was a guest bedroom instead, it doesn't make that much sense that there would be a toy in the room, and also it would just be kind of random. So overall, the option used to make sense to me, but not as much anymore. I honestly don't know whether I find this more or less likely than Elizabeth dying before FNAF 4's minigames. I could see either being placed above the other in terms of likeliness, and honestly the next option isn't very likely to me either. There's only really one option that I think works best, but we'll get to that later. First, let's talk about the next likely option, Elizabeth dying after the missing children incident and before FNAF 2. This option is an interesting one because it mostly uses evidence that isn't necessarily true but can be under certain interpretations, the main one being what Hand Unit says at the beginning of Sister Location.
Due to the massive success, and even more so the unfortunate closing of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it was clear that the stage was set, no pun intended, for another contender in children's entertainment.
Now, there's a million things this could mean, but a very common interpretation is that Circus Baby's Pizza World opened after Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closed down, and typically this involves the first Freddy's location. FNAF 2 was kind of successful, but because it shut down in just 2 to 3 weeks, it was mostly a failure and in no way a massive success. The FNAF 1 location was very successful, but it died down a lot over time. Still, it was the only Freddy's location that likely didn't have any murders take place, so it could very well be what Hand Unit is referring to. But the first Freddy's is the one that was the most successful, so Hand Unit referring to that one makes the most sense. Regardless, we've already talked about why Elizabeth likely didn't die after FNAF 1, and Hand Unit referring to FNAF 2 makes the least sense, so this line would imply that she died after the first Freddy's closed and after the missing children incident. There's also the fact that Afton in the fourth closet seems to make the fun times to kill kids because he can't do it himself anymore, and since the fun times in the games are also made to kill, it likely means that he made them for the same reason in the games, and there's no reason he wouldn't just use them for the missing kids, meaning he likely made the fun times after the missing children incident. But there's a few problems here. First of all, William in the books doesn't create the fun times to kill just because he can't anymore. In fact, he made Circus Baby to kill before he killed the missing kids. Circus Baby in the fourth closet was the fourth Charlie bot infected with Henry's anger that William stole and transformed, turning her into the Circus Baby death machine that we all know and love. But he did that before he killed the missing kids, which we know because he actually says that Elizabeth was the final spark he needed to figure out how possession works, and it's heavily implied that he killed the missing kids to experiment with that possession. He killed the missing kids because Elizabeth died, not the other way around. However, in the games, does that necessarily have to be the case? Technically, there can be Charlie bots in the games, but Charlotte's spirit latched onto the puppet. It's most likely that William noticed that, which is what prompted him to make the fun times and kill kids, having them possess the fun times, resulting in Elizabeth getting caught in the crosshairs. The reason he doesn't use the fun times for the missing children incident is because they are stored in the rental facility and rented out for private parties. Sure, he could have continued using them to kill kids, and he probably does, but those private parties wouldn't be at Freddy's since there's already animatronics there, and considering he hates Henry, he probably wanted to destroy Freddy's reputation. That part is just speculation though, to be fair. There's also the issue that if Afton made the fun times after the missing children incident but before FNAF 2, he still didn't use them for Save Them, so him not using them for the missing children incident doesn't create that problem. But if we are to say that Babies opened before Freddy shut down, what's Hand Unit's line about? Well, what a lot of people miss is that he is not talking about Circus Baby's Pizza World, but rather Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental. I played you the clip earlier, but what I didn't show you was what he said right after. Take another listen to that line and also pay attention to what he says right after.
Due to the massive success, and even more so the unfortunate closing of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it was clear that the stage was set, no pun intended, for another contender in children's entertainment. Unlike most entertainment venues, our robotic entertainers are rented out for private parties during the day, and it's your job to get the robots back in proper working order before the following morning.
See, he's talking about the rental service, not the Pizza World. However, I did mention earlier that the rental service likely started up right after the Pizza World shut down, and that's absolutely true. But what else did I mention? Didophobia, where the rental facility is shut down prior to the events of Sister Location and had to be started up again after FNAF 1, after Freddy shut down. And so, that could be what Hand Unit is referring to. But what was it that caused me to believe Elizabeth died before the missing children incident in the first place? Well, it wasn't the fourth closet. It was actually, of all things, Into the Pit. Not the story, but the trailer for the game. There's a moment in the trailer where you can see Circus Baby in a poster on the wall. The fact that Circus Baby exists at this point means that the Pizza World already exists and the rental facility is likely now up and running. If that's the case, that means Elizabeth has already died, and Into the Pit takes place during the missing children incident, placing Elizabeth's death before the missing children incident. But that doesn't really determine anything specific. Sure, it concludes that Elizabeth must have died before the missing children incident, but why can't it have been before the Bite of 83? That would still explain the absence of Elizabeth in FNAF 4. So in hindsight, maybe I haven't been going in order of likeliness, because I feel like Elizabeth dying before the Bite of 83 is kind of more likely than her dying after the missing children incident. But while it does explain Elizabeth's absence, which I still don't really know how to answer, I don't think it's the most likely option. However, that's not because of a definitive piece of evidence that is completely undeniable and that there's no other option for. If you believe Elizabeth died before the bite, or even any of the other options, that's completely fair. The main reason I think Elizabeth died after the bite victim actually comes from a theory that I came up with, and that theory comes from Help Wanted 2. And it's one that I talked about in a video I made dedicated to Circus Baby and Help Wanted 2, and I'll be pulling this part of the script from that video. In the Funtime Freddy Breaker Room level, there are 5 switches that we need to use to reactivate the power throughout the facility. We see the switches actually have labels on them as well, but 2 of these caught my eye. One of them is named ? Which seems to indicate that it's something secret, possibly relating to the observation rooms and Didophobia, but there's also one labeled Pizza World. The weird thing about this is that sister location takes place in Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental. Circus Baby's restaurant, the one Elizabeth died at, is separate from the location in sister location, of course being an actual restaurant rather than an underground rental facility. But this game seems to be indicating that the power to the Pizza World restaurant is controlled from the rental facility, indicating Circus Baby's Pizza World is also on top of Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental. There's a lot of stuff in this one area and it's kinda cool, but what's more interesting is that in Dance With Me, Circus Baby's Pizza World is said to have a big red door, despite the yellow door shown in the 4th Closet graphic novel since the graphic novels aren't always accurate. Circus Baby's having a big red door is something MatPat noted in a theory from a while ago, connecting it to the fact that Fredbear's has a big red door too, as does FNAF 6, which likely is Fredbear's. While that Circus Baby's Pizza World location from Dance With Me probably isn't the same building, it could be meant to indicate something. So if Baby's and Fredbear's are around the same place and both have a big red door, is it possible that Fredbear's also became Circus Baby's Pizza World? I'd say yes, because both being similar in design and being in the same vicinity would be pretty strange, and it just makes sense. If this is true, it would indicate that Elizabeth must have died at some point after the bite victim, because Baby's would have had to be open after Fredbear's closed down in order to be the same building, and so Help Wanted 2 and Into the Pit have completely narrowed down the placement in the timeline that Elizabeth died, after the bite of 83 and after Fredbear's shut down, but before the missing children incident and before Freddy's shut down, likely between 83 and 85, probably in 1984, and I'm pretty satisfied with that answer. But going back into last theory's segue into this one, if Elizabeth died after the bite of 83, that means Didophobia takes place in 1994, and that is at the earliest considering we don't know how long the rental service was functional before shutting down 10 years before Didophobia, in which case Didophobia takes place after FNAF 1 and before Sister Location, which once again tells us that Sister Location is indeed after FNAF 1. But what do you guys think? Do you guys agree with when I think Elizabeth died? Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree, and tell me when you guys think Elizabeth died. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want to, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye guys!